extension at Baylor, and now breaking news in the Big 12 where Bob Bowlsby, the Big 12 commissioner, Paul, stepping down. Is that correct?
Yes, later in the year, as they say. So no exact date has been given, but he says the Big 12 will soon bring in our 4 new members and negotiate a new grant of rights and meeting agreements. I truly believe the Big 12 and our member institutions are in a strong position now as we look to the future. And so to paraphrase, as such, it's an appropriate time for me to step away from the commissioner's role. So the next leader of the conference. So, I mean, he's probably not wrong. Like, you know, they're a new era, probably need a new commissioner. And I mean, you talk about a guy whose career is looked at through 2 completely different lenses over the last 8 months. It's Bob Bowlsby.
Yeah, for Baylor fans in particular. I mean, right? Maybe the way they looked at him, you know, TCU era, 2014-ish. Versus maybe how they looked at him like right now, for example, when, you know, Baylor's been able to turn things around and he's been very complimentary along the way of Mack Rhoades and Linda Livingstone and Rule and Aranda now as well. But, yeah, that's shocking news. I mean, I don't think anybody was out there, you know, if there was scuttlebutt about this, then I just didn't see it. But, you know, typically if something's got a lot of smoke to it, eventually it's going to come across your timeline when you follow a lot of college football. And I hadn't seen a single thing about this till just now. So curious to hear kind of the details and how long he's been debating this and all that jazz. But, yeah, pretty shocking news and kind of torn here because – I mean, we're just learning about it, so I don't have a really well-formed opinion on this. But, you know, on the one hand, yeah, they're changing, so maybe it makes sense to kind of change as well. But at the same time, there's also a lot of changing going on, so now you're also changing your commissioner, and that's just another thing that you have to worry about. So I'm curious to know how long maybe they've been, you know, having this in mind that this might be a possibility.
You think Mack Rhoades, who will join us in about an hour at 4:20, gets that extension, you think that his name would have come up as a successor? 10-year now, he's extension to Baylor. I'm not saying they were trying to be forward-thinking, but you think that might have been it? Because I would have thought that maybe Mack Rhoades or somebody else, Jamie Pollard, Iowa State, whoever, might be at least somebody to look at when it comes to an AD. The commissioner of the Big 12. And I know even some Baylor fans who still to this day, or other fans, just can't stand it because of all of what happened from the time he arrived. And I don't care what he did when they responded to the Texas and Oklahoma story, which they should have known more about but didn't. But what they did after that saved the conference and now still relevant. And now, again, in basketball, 2 teams that are not leaving. Kansas and Baylor, Texas Tech not leaving 3-4 years ago. We're in the championship game.
I know this isn't a fair comparison, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who thought George Washington was a buffoon too. But then when they won the Revolution, they kind of forgot about all the stuff they didn't like before.
Oh no, he was not popular.
Yeah, exactly.
For a lot of people.
So again, but then he helped him win the Revolutionary War, and all of a sudden he's a genius. So look, sometimes at the beginning, and I also think that now, especially after we've heard a lot of the things we heard when he testified in front of the state Senate, basically, why wasn't this given consideration before? And he's like, well, it was. We had 2 pretty big opponents to it, Texas and Oklahoma. So, all the things that they try to do. So when you got, roadblocks in your way to things that you wanted to do before and they're out of the way, all of a sudden you can look like a pretty darn good commissioner, especially when the people who are impeding your actual ideas on progress are out of your way.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. Yesterday, when some of the Mack Rhoades stuff started to surface, which I had been in touch with Paul, Craig, Armstrong, and others about what might be going on, I was given a little bit of a heads up that there would also be an industry decision today. I had no idea what it was. Now we do. It was Bob Bowlsby, and I wonder, and Mack will join us at 4:20, and we can straight up ask him, did he ever have interest in being the commissioner of the Big 12? You wondered if Bowlsby would have walked away or things had gone to hell back a year ago, or almost a year ago. Well, what would have happened? I get a feeling, based on a couple of the texts that I got, and I had no idea what they're talking about, that this was proactive what Baylor did. Also, he earned it because of what they've done in athletics, but this also ties him up. And now that's not on the table as far as Mack Rhoades in the Big 12, if in fact it ever was as the commissioner.
Well, we've seen various conferences now, and a lot of the Power Fives have just recently changed commissioners. You know, we've gotten to know the likes of the Kevin Warrens and those types of guys. So, yeah, I don't know, you know, what direction the Big 12 goes. I would think that if you're like a lot of athletic directors, you've got a list on you at all times, just to always be prepared for, you know, having to make a change. So I don't know who would be on that list. I would think, yeah, it's quite possible Mack Rhoades would have been on that list prior to the contract extension. But this is big because, I mean, they're in a tough spot right now in a lot of ways, and they're also in a good spot. I mean, the college football landscape, I don't think it's done changing. And I don't just mean like, you know, the Big 12 just adding teams or whatever. I think that, like, with all these TV deals coming up, it just feels like something's going to shift. And I don't know what it is, but just it doesn't feel like the big shifts like OU, Texas are over. And I don't even mean like teams jumping – you know, just a move exactly like that, but something in that same vein. I think there's just still feels like something's not quite settled in college football right now. So it's a very interesting time, and you know, obviously Bob Bowlsby is going to have the greatest retirement ever because after the last year of his NIL and you know all the different things that are going on, it's a wild time, and so somebody's going to have to come in and have their bootstraps, you know, strapped up and tight because there's a lot of work to be done for the Big 12. Not only with just all the stuff going on, legislation and all that, but you know also the fact they've got a TV contract that comes up here in a couple of years, and they're waiting in line behind a couple of other conferences who are going to take a big piece of that pie, and they need somebody who's going to be able to come in and get them a good deal and, you know, set the table for them in their future. So this is going to be really key who they end up bringing in.